Hey, what's going on, everybody? Shout out YouTube. This is Drew coming to you here with our hero xKINGsFULLx from our Twitch chat. We have a $66 50K here on America's Cardroom that him and I are just going to go over and chat about some spots and see where we go from there. What's up, Kings?
How you doing? How you doing, YouTube?
Nice, nice. So this is your hand history here, and we got fairly deep, right?
Yeah, we final table.
Nice, nice. Spoiler.
Yeah.
Cool. So let me see. I guess we'll just get into it. I just have the V-pipped hands here, everybody. So we have an open. We are pretty deep. I guess actually I could make it so we could see these stats easier. Hang on one second. All right, there we go. So we defend the under the gun / button open here.
Yep. Crusher James is a pretty good player. I'm not super pumped of having him on my left.
Yeah, he's been around for a while. Do you know anything about his style, or just like a thinker here?
I know he's a thinker. We really don't run into each other that often.
Yeah, yeah. I haven't really seen him in a while. He might have taken a break for a bit. I think he used to pump out higher volume in the past. So we check. He c-bets, and we call. Is this pretty much like a check call down line here for the most part, being this?
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna. He's gonna c-bet a lot of his ace-x, and I'm not gonna get him off of it. I don't think with a raise. And we just started the tournament. I just don't want to go cycle right out of the gate.
Right. Yeah, I totally dig that. And the stats here on the bottom, the yellow background, these are big blinds, the name, how many hands we have on them, and then their total aggression frequency, just so you know,
Okay.
and anybody else watching the video. So when we're looking at some of these spots and we're talking about it, everybody, it's 126 big blinds, well, 125 big blinds here effective starting this hand. So, you know, to go kind of psycho at the 80 level here this deep is probably a bit ambitious, right?
Right.
So we check, and he barrels. We call. No bueno. So when we hit here on the river, what do you think? Like, I feel like check, call, the most obvious draw comes in, and we lead is, like, really transparent for the most part.
Right.
What do you think? Like, is that our only kind of play, though?
I think he's going to check back a lot of the times when we get there. So I think really the only way to make any chips is to bet. I don't really expect him to call when we do get there very often, so you'd have to bet pretty small.
Yeah, yeah. And then even to some thinking players, that's kind of obvious. So it's always an interesting situation. I was just kind of curious what you think. It's almost like we have to check when we hit and hope that they still bet.
Level themselves into betting something
Yeah, yeah.
of value.
So he goes pretty hard there on the river, and we fold. Let me get these hands in here. All right. So we got the king jack here. We open. We get a big blind defend. We flop top pair, decent kick. C-bet call. We barrel and they fold. Okay, not too much there, right?
Yeah, I could have made that a little bit smaller.
On the turn or the flop, you think?
The turn.
So this is a little bit over half pot. What is that, 560 almost? Or it would have been for half pot. So this is a little over. The sizing seems kind of consistent. Do you have like a bet slider or something that you do here for sizings?
No, I basically just type in every bet that I do manually. I just think with the turn flush draw, he could have called with a 5 or a 10 to keep him around. I don't think he's going to call very often with a 5, but if he has a 10, bet a little bit smaller, and if I'm somehow beat, I can re-get there. And really, the only hand that I think he can have that beats me is King 10, King Queen.
Right, right.
Possibly a set of 5s, so I think I could just bet a little bit smaller. It's not the the end of the world, though.
Right, right. So what would you see as smaller, like closer to half pot or something?
Right, yeah.
Gotcha, cool. I dig it, I dig it. All right, we raise here the 7-9 on the button and take it. We have a raise here in early mid position, and we defend. Do you have any thoughts on defending the big blind, like for people?
I defend the blinds pretty wide, not ridiculously wide. Depends on the price that you're getting. I would have preferred for this to be a min raise, but I defend pretty wide, and when you defend wide, though, you also have to, you have to realize your equity of all 5 cards, and it's tough to do. So maybe I should defend just a little, like slightly less wide, because I find myself getting into a lot of spots where I just check give up too often.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, I feel you there. If this was king deuce off, would you defend still?
No.
Gotcha, okay. So yeah, I think we all kind of place a little bit more value on the suited hands that are
Right.
defending in the big blind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does suck to check fold in those situations. I think some different boards we can, check call float with the intention
Right.
of taking it away on the river. You think that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a good
You're right.
counter strategy?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So we raise here from the small blind and take it down. So for those of you watching too, we're going to go through all the hands here just to remind you that he V-pipped. So you're going to see some hands where he raised, took it down, but it'll give you kind of a good feel for how the tournament went as a whole, and we'll go through and talk about the spots where, like this one, where it starts to get a little bit more tricky, right? So you open the button, and this person a little over 3x from the small blind here.
Mm-hmm.
Are you ever folding here?
Sometimes, yeah. I'm not curious to know what his 3-bet is in general from the small blind. If it's super wide,
Yeah, only 70
or
hands here.
okay,
So we don't really know too much. He
so it's
3-bet
tough
once.
to say.
Yeah, tough to say. But 96 big blinds effective here. That I'm sure that comes into your decision whether you call or fold.
Yeah, I'm assuming I call here.
Yep.
Yep.
So we flop decent, and we got about a third pot c-bet.
Mm-hmm. I don't see anything other than calling.
Yeah. Check, and we bet here.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, I guess, do you like tailoring your bet sizings post flop to the situation, or do you prefer to try to keep them generally the same so that there's not like any tells or anything?
That's an interesting question. I think for the most part, I like to tailor it to the specific situation. Like, I can't imagine him having a hand that beats King Queen checking here unless he turned a set of 6s, and I don't really think he's 3-betting 6s from the small blind very often. So I think right here I have the best hand, but I don't want to bet a large amount to scare him away if he does have jacks or something. So I think for the most part, I'm in this spot, I'm going to just be betting based on the action and where I think he's at in the hand.
I gotcha.
And I could have very well checked this turn as well.
Yeah, I don't think checking is necessarily that bad either. What made me think of the question was the King Jack suited hand, where you said you wanted to go with a smaller sizing there, closer to half pot, and this is closer to a third pot almost, right?
Right.
So the sizing here, I guess you're trying to keep in jacks, like you said, right?
Right.
If they call, it's going to be... when you're betting here, are we thinking about shoving the river or too deep? We're not usually going to get there.
Well, if this bet size, we're not going to get the pot size shove. So that's an interesting point. Like, I can't really... if I shove the river, it's going to be an overbet at this point if he calls.
Yeah. Which, actually, the overbet could look like a bluff. It might work and get jacks to call, like, if that's what we're thinking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it could work out well. I was just kind of curious your thoughts. And unfortunately, he goes away.
And I probably just outflopped ace-king and...
Yeah. Actually, kind of a nice sizing. I think people might peel that with ace-king a little bit more. All right, so we open the 8-7 suited. We get hit with the 3-piece. This person we do have some hands on, 390. They're not overly aggressive. Their 3-bet is 6%, but it looks like primarily they do like to 3-bet in the cutoff.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not overly aggressive. We're expecting a C-bet 71% of the time, a barrel 75. So they seem to double barrel decently, but then get a little bit more passive on the river. Does that change your thoughts here at all in this situation?
Well, I'm getting 3-1 or over 3-1, 8-7 suited, super deep. Like, I'm gonna call pretty much versus everyone. Tighter the better, because then I can win a bigger pot if I hit.
Yeah. This is too pretty to fold.
Yeah.
There we go. So this is always interesting, flopping this like lower flush draw in some of these situations. We got a 2/3 pot C bet here, and we're still 100 big blinds. We started this hand effective deep. So what do you kind of like to do from here? Is this going to be a pretty standard check call for you here?
I believe so, yeah. We're really deep to get in this flush draw. You know, I don't really want to check raise, get shoved on.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there. I think I'm going to be check calling here this deep. If we were maybe 40 big blinds, 30 big blinds, we start to play it a little bit more aggressive, you think?
Yeah.
And so for those of you watching, wondering about the different stacked, when we're kind of highlighting that, I have a couple thoughts. And the way that people will respond in the hands they'll get in for 100 big blinds when we check raise to get it in here, I just think that it's going to be a tighter range of hands, whereas once we start getting around 40, 30, even 20 big blinds, people are going to start committing with second pairs and some weaker hands and things like that. So the value of getting it in and being able to get people to fold when we raise there, I think, probably goes up the shorter stacked we are. What do you think?
I agree with that, yes.
Cool. So we check call, and this is interesting because they went 2/3 pot on the flop. Now they're going with the same bet sizing, but now this is less than a third on the turn. How do you interpret this?
As weak, because now there's 2 flush draws on board. I can't imagine him betting like any super strong hand for value here on this wide of a board that small.
Yeah.
So I almost like a raise here. Honestly, I bet you I call just because the price is so good, but a raise is interesting.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about too. It's like, oh my gosh, it's such a good price to just call, but it's like, dang, if we can get them to fold here with 8 high and have the insurance of the flush draw, like I could see, because there's already 4,400 in the middle, we have 9,600, so this is like a 50% stack increase.
Mm-hmm.
This is a $66 buy-in. If this was a lower buy-in, I feel like when I jam here, the folding frequency is going to be pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how high it's going to be in a tournament like this. You think you still like raising? Would you just jam given how much is in there, or would you
I
raise?
think you'd have to jam. I'm just trying to think of like what hands does he think that I rep when I shove here, like because I know if I was in his spot, I would interpret my bet as weakness, and his shove in turn would be weak because he thinks that I'm weak.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't. I would never bet this small on this board. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. It doesn't look like, even if you call 5,400 in the middle, they'll have 7,400. It doesn't look like they're like setting something up. It looks kind of like,
right.
Actually, from some of the more thinking regulars, and I don't know if it's being taught somewhere, I've actually noticed this turn bet sizing here when it's smaller this is almost an indicator in the higher stakes anyway, that this person is intending to check the river. Have you ever have you noticed that?
Yeah.
So I've kind of taken that into consideration here. It's pretty interesting. They might just have like a weak ace-x that they 3-bet you with.
Yeah.
So
like now that like king queen, that's scared. Well, not as scared anymore, but
right, like king queen could be like a good candidate actually.
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean, the only hand for value that he could be betting there, I think, is like King Jack of Spades, King Jack of Hearts, and you can't have King Jack of Hearts anymore. So I think you just have to lead this river. He showed so much weakness on the turn. He's not going to bluff the river. Any jacks a straight. So I think you just got to kind of hope that he has a jack in his range and could call bet.
Yeah, and this is exactly that situation that we talked about, like the first hand with the straight draw, and then what we do when we check call, most obvious,
Right.
and gets there. And so you went with the, is that half pot? Looks like a little bit, slightly over half pot, right?
Well, I think he does call. He's probably only calling with jacks, like a straight,
Right.
a straight or better. So I think you can just bet a little bit bigger because he's not going to fold a straight.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a really nice river card to get that jack to call. And with the small turn sizing and now seeing them call the river, it almost feels like they had ace jack, queen jack, type of hands. Maybe not king jack necessarily, unless they were trying to induce you to raise them on the turn, which feels a little less likely, but
right.
So we scoop a nice pot there. We got a limp, you raise, and then they run like a fish. All right, so the next hand here, we open in middle position from 140 big blinds, and we pickle Rick here. That's a funny name. 3 bets from the big blind, and we don't really know too much about them. Small sample. They look a little bit splashy, more call-y.
I think we open from this position and get 3-bet by the big blind. It's almost never weak. We're so deep. I feel like I'm just up against a really nutted range here.
So how do you like to progress, or what do you think we should do?
I just feel like my hand can be dominated a lot. I don't really mind a fold at all.
Cool. Yeah, I dig it. I don't mind a fold either. It is a bit more enticing that we're semi-deep, but most people just defend here. So we may 3-bet here, especially 80 big blinds deep. I do think it's probably a smart fold because it's just going to be dicey a lot of the times post, right?
Right.
All right, so we have an open, a call. We are still pretty deep, still pretty early in the tournament, the 120 level. So this is an interesting spot that I think is fun to talk about. So now this person is c-betting, what is that, the third pot? And almost, no, not quite, third, in between a third and fourth. But anyway, c-betting here into 2 people, 8-8 deuce. What are your thoughts on this playing fours here? Because the majority of the turn cards are overcards, right?
Right. I feel like a lot of people check raise these spots. And it's interesting because like check calling is you're kind of just giving them 2 free cards if they're just c-betting here and with ace jack. But check raising is interesting. I feel like I get check raised a lot in these spots and I don't really know what to do. It just is. It's not great to get raised once you raise this c-bet on this board. So I don't know. I know I call here, and I just really don't know which play is the best, but probably raising. What do you think?
I think that the majority of people out there go with the check call line here. Which I think is fine, especially if you are confident in your post-flop game, you understand how to range people, and then, narrow that range as the streets go on. Because a lot of people, when you check call on this board, it's like there's no draws, right?
Right.
So people will, I think, automatically kind of start to go to the place of you might have an 8, and then they don't double barrel a lot.
Right.
They might shut down with their overs. So I think check call is what most people would do. It could be totally fine. But when you run into people who will barrel you and hit their overcards and then just not be folding, I think there is a nice opportunity to check raise here and end the hand.
Yeah.
And now if we had an 8, I think the majority of players like to kind of trap here, right? Check call.
Right.
But I think check raising here to get overcards to fold is nice, but then check raising here with hands like this, I think can allow us to check raise here with some 8s.
Yeah, I like that.
Which is nice to be able to, especially this deep, be able to build a pot. And against a thinking opponent, I think the majority of them are going to not assume we're check raising an 8 here. So now they're just gonna call down if they have aces, all these other things, and bluff catch, and it could be a way that we win an amazing pot. So I
agree with that.
I like both, but I think we kind of just, based on the player we're against, need to tailor it, because this is a spot, honestly, a lot of people are not check raising, so it's kind of under bluff.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because if I had an 8 here, I would check raise it to build a pot, because we are so deep.
Yeah.
And he's just not. He's a lot of the time they're gonna be like, well, he's never raising an 8. Like, why would you raise an 8?
Yeah.
But I want to raise an 8 to build a pot.
Yeah. So I really like that for a few reasons. I think it's a cool spot to kind of talk about. And then here's what we talked about, right? The overcard check on the turn.
Yeah, that's why the raise is nice, because now I just, I gave him free outs to hit his ace jack or whatever.
Yeah. And then we check. So they had some sort of ace high showdown value here.
Yep.
So we end up winning a pot. And this is partly why, I don't really mind a check call, and the majority of people might be check calling, because there's just, people are going to just assume where you're at here. I think a decent amount of time, and it will play out like this, but you will run into people who just bank the jack and then, value town you because you would have led the 8 on the river and not checked it. So when we check there, they can pretty much play us perfectly on the river when they hit, and now we're guessing.
Exactly.
So there's some cool things going on there. I think we just need to kind of figure out in the moment. So we raise the 7-10 from the small blind. We c-bet 2/3. We get called. What do you think here that old Kings is going to do? Kings from the past.
It's a super draw-heavy board. A bet can get him to fold his ace highs. Maybe a 4. Maybe a 6. I mean, if I bet here, it's a show of strength. I'm not double barreling like no equity here. I kind of like a bet here, although if I was in position, maybe check back. What do you think?
I think that a lot of people, the first thing that comes to my mind is I think a lot of people are floating the c-bet here.
Right.
Blind versus
no
blind.
one's folding anymore. No one's folding anymore.
I know, folding is not cool anymore.
I know.
So, yeah, I think that we raise, and everybody at this point, especially in a higher buy-in like this $66 50K, there's still going to be a certain saturation of recreational players, but I think we're going to have a few more thinking players than we might in some smaller stakes. So that said, I think that it's a little bit obvious to just c-bet, and that they can't just really give up if they have any piece of this. A 4 deuce, a 6, a 3, a 5. None of those hands should be folding. So with that said, I really do like the barrel as well.
You have to bet big.
Yeah.
I was going to say 999, but that's fine too.
Wait, so you don't win the showcase because you went over.
Yeah.
So the barrel, and about the same sizing, right? Is that 2/3? Yep. So that's cool, and you take it down. And I do like the barrel. I think that the one thing that I don't have a habit that I don't really like to fall into is raise small blind c-bet check. It's just so exploitable. And I think
I find myself doing that sometimes, and I would imagine that checking this definitely crossed my mind, and then I second guess myself and went for a bet in the spot, because I do find myself doing that a lot.
Yeah. And it's kind of one of those things that I think over time for me, it eventually went to, okay, do you want to check fold here? You don't love check calling, and then check folding the river. So we picked up some more equity, and we're getting floated wide. Why not barrel? So we raise the king jack here and take it down.
Easy game.
Easy game. So we have a raise here, a little over min. We are suited, so we call. Check a 3rd pot. We'll take it. Still pretty deep here, so we're kind of carrying over the check call thoughts that we did from the earlier hand. We check. They go half pot. We call. We did not bink here. We check, and they half pot again. And, of course, we fold.
Yeah, I don't think I can really lead that river and rep a whole lot.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I was thinking about leading the river. We could have some 3Xs that, small bet on the flop. We still keep our 3. Half pot on the turn, maybe we call. Sometimes we can, but this person... How did they play... No, that was the person that was sitting here that went with the small sizing, 2 streets.
Yeah.
So that was somebody different, so never mind. So we raised a small blind here into Holy Guacamole, who is a regular, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
What do you feel? How do you feel about my small blind and the big blind opening size of 2.5x?
I think that this deep, it is pretty fine. We still have room to barrel and, check call. Our whole playbook is in front of us. I think once we start to get a little bit shallower stacked, it can, we might need to implement a little bit more of a limping strategy.
Right.
For maneuverability. But what do you think? Do you kind of make an adjustment in the small blind?
I'm not sure in this tournament. Actually, in this tournament, I have so many chips the whole time that I don't think that's an issue. I ran really well, but typically I open like 2.5, maybe a little bit more, just to encourage some folds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like it. And I think the sizing is important. It's interesting. If this was ignition, you can like min raise from the small blind and big blind is still folding. It blows my mind.
Okay.
It really does blow my mind. But on a little bit more of a competitive site like this, I do think that sizing matters because for a lot of thinking regs, the 2 to 2.5, they're going to be defending a ton in the big blind. And then we're going to need to hope that our post-flop edge kind of negates the positional disadvantage.
Right. Now here I'm thinking, it's just so dry of a board that a big bet just seems like a bluff.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even just like a third here. I know I'm giving them a really good price to call, but it's so dry that like, what hand am I blasting this board with?
Right. But you have been, from the hands that we've seen up to this point, we have had a few small blind hands where this is consistent with your other sizing.
Yeah, that's true. So it is consistent.
Yeah, so that could be valuable there. That they might not like pick it out. Like, why is he going bigger on this board? So,
that's true. And like this is a new screen name, so he doesn't have 1,000 hands versus me.
Mm-hmm.
He probably has 100 hands versus me. So like my stats aren't very defined, which is nice. Which is a very good reason to make a new screen name.
Yeah, I like it. So we scoop there. We open the suited. We get a big blind defend from the Red Dragon. Check. We bet here a little, right around half pot. And they end up taking it down.
How do you feel about the bet there? Do you think there's any merit to checking that back or no?
I think that I personally like keeping the lead here.
Mm-hmm.
Being this deep, I think that the majority of their hands are just check calling. So I think it's easier for us to navigate, apply pressure, but then also there's going to be, some good turn cards that we can barrel.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of good turn cards. So
as well. I wouldn't necessarily want to check here and then be put in a situation where this person leads out 2/3 on the turn. It's a king or a queen, leads out 2/3 and then just bombs the river and just punishes our check back range here,
That's true. And if you check back here, it's guaranteed it's going to go heart, and he's going to bet. So
I know, I know, right? It is. It's always a dodgy turn card and then the Punisher river card. So yeah, I like c-betting there. So Guacamole opens under the gun. We get 2 calls.
Flop absolutely nothing.
Yep. Brick City.
Okay. Check.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm out.
Yep.
All right. So that one's pretty easy. Kings, we raise, and then we sigh.
Yep, standard. That's okay.
Yeah. Okay, so open, good price in the big blind with a connected hand. Pretty normal, right?
Yep.
Oh, baby. Gut shot. Pickle Rick. What a name. Decides to bet here versus... This was the aggressor pre-flop.
Mm-hmm.
I think for a good amount of people that this is just going to be a check fold on to the next one. What do you think, though? Is there any room for anything else to happen here? We are...
I wish he bet a little bit smaller. He bet pretty big.
Yeah.
I'm not a giant fan of just calling here, and I mean the 7's great, but your 9 and your 8 when he bets that big, unless he's one and dunning, it just seems like has a hand like 10s.
Mm-hmm.
I probably fold here, and I kind of like a fold here.
Yeah.
Had he bet a little bit smaller, check raising can be interesting. But yeah, I think I like a fold here, and you can rep a 4, or when a 4 hits, you can rep that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Versus a smaller bet, so you don't have. Essentially, you're kind of like open-ended here, even though you're not.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think that folding is kind of the default play here, especially to this sizing. But the thing that I think about sometimes, so if this was a different sizing, this sizing, I think folding is going to be pretty normal. But had it been a maybe closer to half pot sizing, I think that this person in late position is going to have a decent stabbing frequency.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's why I like the raise.
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes I like the raise, but what kind of is a little discouraging is the hand that, or the card we're looking for, the 7, puts the one card straight out there.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of like is going to be a bit discouraging, and I don't think we get paid off as much.
Right.
Unless they actually hit. Like if this card was different, maybe let's say a jack or another, some sort of higher Broadway card that this person might have hit. And then if a 7 comes, then the only hand really that we would need to make a straight would be the 8-9. I think that there's a little bit more value in calling in that situation.
It's harder for him to put us on that hand.
Mm-hmm.
And if he has like a top pair good kicker hand, it's going to be tough for him to get away.
Yeah.
So you have potential to win a pretty big pot.
Yeah, exactly. So I might call more if the board wasn't quite like this, but I think this one, yeah, I think I'm just going to be folding though.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what he did. All right.
I'm sure I fold, yeah.
All right.
Uh-oh.
All right, Jax, we love you and we hate you.
Yeah.
So open, we 3-piece him, and then Guacamole shoves 32 bigs in the big blind.
Versus good regular, I'm calling here.
Yeah, this is a slam dunk, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those chips.
I mean, I'm not super pumped about it, but I'm calling.
Yeah. And
I mean, pretty good flop. Pretty good flop for his hand.
Must be nice.
Yeah.
All right, so we lose a little one there. Open the 10s. Okay. And I imagine we're c-betting here.
Yeah.
2/3.
How do you feel about the sizing?
I don't think it's bad. I mean, it's pretty consistent with your other sizings.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, when you say I don't think it's bad, what do you think about it in this specific spot?
I think I like it. I think I'm probably going to be right around here too.
All right.
I think I'm going to be right around here too.
Yeah, no jack, no queen, no 7, no 6.
Yeah, let's see. Pickle Rick ain't giving up. He's got heart. Oh, that's nice, I think, maybe. 31. So, again, just consistent sizing here, right?
I can't give him a cheap card on this board, and here this totally sucks.
You think he's got maybe ace-8, ace-9? Who's in the big blind?
He can have queen jack, he can have 6. I feel like he's going to raise the flop of 6-7 just because you don't want a jack or queen to come off.
Right.
Or at least I would.
Right.
The ace is like almost, for my range, I feel like the ace isn't relevant unless I actually have aces.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I could have ace jack here, but I don't know. That seems a little stretching it a little. So I mean, he can have ace 9, ace 10, ace 8. I feel like ace or 10-9 and 10-8 would raise the flop.
Mm-hmm.
So when he raises here, I feel like it's either a straight or aces up,
Right.
and it's kind of like I'm just gonna call and hope I get there if I need to.
Yeah, for sure.
You agree with that?
Yeah, I echo all that. It feels pretty accurate. So we know we are not folding. And then, oh no, you didn't. I think Pickle Rick got ace jack, if I had to guess. Queen jack. Another nice lifer here.
Yeah, just get there one time.
Dang.
When I flop a straight there and they have a set, they boat up every single time.
I know.
Well, that's okay.
There's a little delay, and then bink.
Mm-hmm.
Board pairs.
So yeah, we re-enter.
So
and typically I wouldn't re-enter this, but I thought I was playing pretty well, and I just planned on playing 3 tables this day.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't want to. This was my biggest buy-in on the day, and I just didn't want to give up like my best opportunity.
Too much heart,
so, right? And like had it been like 2-400, I would not have re-entered. Just I don't think it's bad to re-enter at that point at all.
Mm-hmm.
But for 66, this is like towards the upper, like the higher buy-ins for me.
Right.
So I kind of want to have a couple more blinds when I re-enter or late register.
I dig it. Cool. Makes sense. Good points. Good points. So we got a guy opening EP here. We're calling on the button with the ace-9 suited. They got 25 bigs. Is this a pretty normal call here? You like this?
This is kind of a weird spot where it's like I don't want to 3-bet and get it in. I don't want to 3-bet fold, and I don't want to fold.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not like super pumped about flatting either. What do you think I should do or should have done in this spot?
I don't know. You kind of highlighted on the points. One thing I will say is that I kind of do like is, of course, position. But I also kind of like that they're on 25 bigs, because this is one of those stacks where they open c-bet and people start to get close to that point where they don't want to just barrel their stack into the dirt on the turn.
Right.
So I think that we could have some nice opportunities here to even just float them. So I think if we are planning on manipulating their maneuverability here a bit, that I like flatting more. But I can also see folding, and the 3-bet options I don't know that I necessarily love, but if we do 3-bet them here, it does kind of put them to a decision. So if they 4-bet jam here, I'm not going to have a problem folding this hand.
That's true.
So I don't mind the 3-bet folding personally. I don't mind calling. If you are somebody watching and you are a lower stakes buy-in player who's not fully confident in your post-flop game, just fold here would be what I would say. But if you are a thinking player like Kings is here, flatting, and you kind of understand some of the dynamics here, then I don't mind flatting and 3-betting here.
I mean, I just wish I had ace-10 suited here. It's just like infinitely better.
I know, right? So we got a gutty.
And I'm giving it up.
Yeah, me too.
That's a scary board to c-bet.
Yeah, it is.
If you don't have it.
All right, so we have an open here, early position. We got 31 bigs. We 3-bet, a little over 3x.
Yeah, I don't want to get flatted, and I bet you that's what happens. I've been finding in these spots I get flatted so often, and it's super annoying when you get flatted and you get, like I said earlier, like the 6, 7, 8 with 2 spades, and you just completely whiff the flop, and then you c-bet and get called. So I beef it up with like my whole range here, because of that.
Yeah.
Do you think that's like a proper adjustment to counteract that?
Yeah, for sure. As long as it is actually affecting their folding frequency, because I'll say, like if this was ignition, for instance, that sometimes we try to beef it up, but I don't know that I'm convinced that they fold more. Yeah,
like had this been like the $11 10K that runs along, I believe it runs alongside this tournament, start at the same time, same structure, like this would not get a fold.
Right. So then maybe the adjustment then, even though it's a little chunky, would be to shove or maybe 3-bet smaller because we know we're going to a flop anyway, and kind of leave us a little bit more room to maneuver post-flop.
Yeah, I like that. And then, like, had we both been like 100 big blinds deep here, I think I kind of. How do you feel about flatting this hand in the spot 100 big blinds deep, effective?
I personally don't mind flatting here
Hmm.
in this spot with some strong hands like Ace King, Ace Queen, maybe even Ace Jack suited, especially if I think that the player, I might have an edge post flop, or that this player might be opening a wider range. So I personally don't mind that. I think a lot of people would just lean towards the 3-bet, but if they are just not folding to 3-bets, then I personally kind of dig the adjustment of 3-betting smaller, or even just calling and then with the intention of check calling any flop and going from there.
Hmm. I like that.
Yeah. Third,
Oh, weird.
easy. You got
I
bailed
mean, it's
out so
okay flop
hard.
though. It's not
Bailed
the flop I
out.
was thinking of. I was thinking of a king high flop, but this is fine.
This'll do.
And I think this is like too big to bet. Like he's gonna fold a lot.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Unless we go like really small, but I mean,
Hmm.
it would be nicer if you had like maybe ace 10 of clubs now, but we probably wouldn't
Yeah,
play it like
I
that.
block. Yeah, because he can't even have the king high flush draw here. I mean,
Yeah.
I kind of gotta. Do you see any reason for betting?
They could still have like some queen of clubs, jack of clubs.
Hmm.
So they did call you. They could have tens and jacks as well. So I do think that there is some value in betting. I'm thinking about what we would check here. Like if we had kings with no club, aces with no clubs, queens, like all of our overpairs, we're betting here, right?
Right.
So I feel like since we're betting a lot of our range here, kind of the hands that we're 3-betting pre and then checking here, almost like ace king with no clubs. Like what else?
Hmm.
What else would we
Right.
not be? What else would we be
It's
3-betting, not c-betting here?
um like our trash. Like if we got a read that he opens super wide from early position and he's got a massive fold to 3-bet. Like I don't see myself taking that spot very often. But if I'd had, like ace seven
Yeah.
or something crazy like that, just on this board, I would just be giving it up. But you bring up a good point. Like, what are we check from our 3-bet range in this spot from the small blind? Like, what are we checking here?
Right. So I almost
And
feel,
then
yeah.
and then when he bets and we call, it's like, what are we check calling? Like, almost only this hand.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, right? So, yeah, I feel like betting is kind of just a more consistent story and
Hmm.
keeps us a little bit more camouflaged. Maybe instead of checking here, it's almost like maybe we could sell the bet because I'm betting everything here and then check
Right.
turn.
Hmm. Had you been in this spot, what would you bet on this flop?
I was thinking about definitely at least a third. Me personally, the first number that came to my mind was like 1266.
Oh, okay.
So pretty small. But me personally too, I know I'm thinking about my game, and I like to bet small on these monotone flops with everything.
Right.
It keeps people wide, and then a lot of the times we could just bring down the hammer if we're bluffing and bet big on the turn. And when the club doesn't come in, people will just fold the majority of the time.
Hmm.
So I kind of like 1266. What would that put? Another 24 in the middle, 7 something, 12. That puts us down. Yeah, I think then we have a reasonable shove when the club misses. It might look like we have the ace of clubs or king of clubs when we shove the turn. And I kind of might like that line with those hands.
Hmm. I agree. Yeah, I agree that betting here would have been a better play.
So check, check. And then now we bet. And this line, just even though we're looking at the hands, just this line feels really value-y, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like if this is a thinking player, it's going to be pretty transparent to them what we have here, I think, right?
Yeah, that bet just screams value bet to me. Now that I'm looking at it.
Yeah. It's almost like if we wanted to get tricky, we almost have to, like by checking the flop, we almost have to check turn too.
Right. And I probably thought of that, but I was thinking well, I suppose you can still get it all in on the river, but then you basically have to check the river or shove the river. Could be
Yeah.
interesting with the club misses.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I think so. I agree with you. So they do call ace on the river. This could be good for you, right?
It could be. It's just he can't have the ace of clubs.
He could have like
Um,
maybe ace with the jack of clubs or queen of
the
clubs.
problem with this card is if I have ace king offsuit with the ace of clubs, I just made top pair.
Mm-hmm.
And he checks back the flop and calls the turn. So how are you arranging them? Like pocket eights, pocket tens with a club?
I think that they're betting all of their pairs that are vulnerable to overs, personally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I would think that. So when they check flop and call your turn, it really, to me, starts to feel a little bit more like they have the queen or jack of clubs with overs. So they're going to have like queen jack, king queen, and then some of those ace x, ace jack, ace queen, ace 10.
Yep.
So it feels kind of split to me. Maybe they actually probably have more combinations. Well, they do of the what they don't have ace king, so they either have ace queen ace jack, and then they could have the king queen, king jack, queen jack, maybe some jack tens, things like that. So there's probably more hands that had the one club that missed.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if we actually check here now at this point to let them bluff. I wonder if they would be happy with like their king queen or jack high showdown here.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to put myself in his spot and see how I would react to a check. Like, hey, if you get check raised, you're beat. Period. For the most part, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And like just overall, it's kind of like one of those situations where it's like, oh man, I wish he would have bet bigger because then I'd be sure it's a bluff.
Right, right.
Um, I bet you $1 million I shove here,
Mm-hmm.
and
Oh baby!
I mean,
Hey, did you hear that? YouTube, $1 million
$1 million.
on the line. We didn't look.
We
through
didn't
this,
shake on it.
We didn't look through his hand history. We didn't look through his hand history, so I don't know what happens. He doesn't. I don't think he remembers. So, oh boy.
All right, I'll get the checkbook out and start writing the check now.
All right. So, go ahead.
I just don't see us getting paid either way. It's going to be tough to get paid either way, is what I mean.
Yeah. You know what? I think that I'm leaning towards checking here. And my thoughts are this, that they, with their queen jack, you know, like we said, with the queen of clubs, jack of clubs, their king jack, their king queen, maybe even some jack 10 with the jack of clubs, 10 of clubs, something like that. I feel like that's the majority of their range that plays the way this happened so far. And now if they happen to have ace queen ace jack with the queen or jack of clubs, I don't know that they're checking this river. Do you get what I mean? Unless they can really read your story and it's like you took a value line and you're getting real super tricky. I wouldn't give people credit for being able to fully see through that, like the masses, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it's almost like I'm thinking that if they have an ace, they're betting it. And if they have king queen, they're not calling queen jack, jack 10, all those types of hands.
Right.
We need to check and give those hands an opportunity to bluff. Check, and aces, for the most part, should be betting. So it almost feels like we just need to check, right?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. That makes a lot more sense than betting here.
Yeah, because
There's
then,
just so many more hands that he can bluff with that than he can call with in this spot.
right, perfect. Yep, you said it. I could have said that in 50 words. You said it in 5, so that's good. So we shove, and they do fold. But yeah, it definitely feels like a check on that river, right?
Yeah, I agree.
As played. All right, cool. So we're going to wrap up part 1 of this video here. Make sure you tune back in for part 2 of this $66 50K with our man Kings Full here. We'll be back in just a couple.